Hey guys, Mr. E here, and today I want to start the video by talking about yesterday's video, which if you missed it, was an epic, drama-filled takedown of Tanner Lindbergh's Ganger Kinda Sounds Boring video. Now, this video, if you watched it for more than about 5 minutes, you realize pretty quickly it's not actually much of a drama video or a response video. In fact, I'm just using Tanner's typically bombastic sort of presentation of things, talking about how he is not sponsored by Fat Shark, so therefore he can be objective and truthful and say that the Ganger sucks. I use that as a jumping off point for something that I think I have been self-conscious about for a while, which is, does working alongside Fat Shark, especially having made a sponsored video with Fat Shark, does it bias me? Does it give me a conflict of interest? And then I yapped for a half hour about what it means to be a content creator in the creator program and also what the requirements of it are. So yeah, not much of a response video, but just I thought it was an interesting way to segue into what otherwise might be a dry discussion. But similarly, today's video, we are going to start with some, context from the Tanner Lindbergh video, and then we're going to respond to it ourselves. But I'm not actually going to talk about what Tanner himself says in this video. In fact, I don't really care, because Tanner is one person. What I think Fat Shark should be aware of, and what I'm aware of, is the masses of people, the people that would actually be engaged with this content and buy it. So those people, we can find them in the comments of the video. So when I scrolled down, I started looking at the comments of his video. I went into my videos on the Ganger as a proposed concept and stuff, and took those comments as well. I went to Reddit and I went to the Fat Shark forums, and I sort of compiled a lot of the criticisms into 3 general categories. And what I'm going to be doing is just kind of talking and responding to those categories, to those claims. And my hypothesis, or sort of the thesis that I am making here, is that there is no reason to panic about this. We need to have hands on the class, because literally even the most boring of concepts can be made exciting in execution. And what I'll first do is I'll sort of disassemble the largest arguing point, the largest thread of negativity that I see, and point out where it is a little bit absurd. And this thread of negativity is all about generalizing. So many comments generalize what they expect the Ganger to do, and then they label it as just not exciting as in comparison to anything else. So they'll say, oh, it's going to be a guy who shoots guns and does drugs, right? That's pretty boring sounding. But what I did to counteract this point is I went ahead and I just made a 1.5-ish sentence description of all of the 5 current Darktide character classes. So we're going to go through those, but I have a twist. I'm going to present it as if there are only 4 current Darktide character classes, and then I'm going to tell you about the tantalizing secrets, the potential awesome reveal of the 5th character class, guys. The one of the existing character classes, but how excited would you be if you got this one released? And you'll let me know in the comments, right? So we'll start here with a giant who has huge strength. Most of his weapons are rough pieces of metal. He can charge through enemies and focuses on melee damage and tankiness. We also have a tanky frontline fighter. He is supported by a dog that can be directed to attack distant enemies. He focuses on staggering enemies and uses blunt weapons that can charge into enemies and knock them to the ground. A ranged gun-toting guardsman type, with a focus on sustaining ammo and killing high-value targets. He can throw extra grenades and either engage with long-range sniping or mixed melee and range attacks. And a space wizard who uses special resources to cast spells and activate abilities. They are very fragile but can do a lot of damage and have special abilities instead of grenades. So, guys, with those 4 character classes, take yourself to an alternate reality and pretend there's been some sort of leaks or something. Like I've leaked to you and I've said, guys, I know what the 5th character class is going to be, guys. It's called the Zealot, and he's a nimble fighter who's really agile and aggressive. He focuses on dodging enemy attacks. He uses all sorts of melee and can charge into his enemies to land a devastating blow. How cool does that really sound, right? We've already got 2 other classes that can charge into enemies. I think if you took today's climate and you released the zealot into it, people would be like, what the fuck? This is boring as shit. This is like taking a literal cup of Sister of Battle and pouring a gallon of water into it. Like, it is just milquetoast melee dude. The zealot is such a boring concept, but yet people still play him. Why do people play the zealot when it is such a boring concept? Well, it's because he has abilities and weapons and talents and cosmetics or whatever else it is that differentiates him and makes him stand out from the cast. Why do people play either Ogryn or Arbites when both of these classes are melee fighters? They both use blunt weapons, they both have insane stagger, they're both very, very tanky, right? Why would you play one over the other? Well, because they end up playing fundamentally very differently, and they serve different roles, and one of them has a dog even. So there are lots of ways that the creators, the devs, can differentiate these classes beyond their very simplistic descriptions. So even if we got a leak that told us something about the class, we have to envision that it's going to be fleshed out into being very different. And so what I did also is I made a one-sentence sort of blurb for what I envision hypothetically we might be getting with a Ganger class. A criminal who can dual-wield weapons and mixes ranged and melee attacks. They use combat drugs to enhance their abilities and lay down booby traps for enemies. So right there, I mean, there's at least 3 things that stand out to me here that could be defined or like could make the character play very differently. If they can dual wield, that's a whole big deal. If they can use combat drugs to like, if they could do like stims that do different things, if they have permanent stims, who knows, right? If they can lay down traps for enemies and like fill hallways with like tripwires and stuff, who knows, right? Literally the possibilities are endless because we know nothing. We have no concept of what is truly coming to us, so you can't really go out here and generalize the non-existent class into being, boring, because we literally just do not know how it's going to be realized. So that is the biggest thread of negativity that I've been seeing, is people just being like, it's going to be another guy that shoots guns. Well, you don't know that, but whatever. So now let's disassemble the last 3 points, and these are the ones that I see repeated over and over and over again, and I'll be talking about why I don't typically agree, or I might actually kind of partially agree with some of these. The first one is Ganger is a boring concept and there's much cooler 40k stuff. You know, agree with the second half, there is much cooler 40k stuff, but in the same vein, there's much cooler 40k stuff than the current character classes we have implemented in Darktide, right? The Arbites is a pretty cool concept, but think about like the Veteran, right? The Veteran is just like literally a guardsman they can't call a guardsman because this guy is not actually in the guard. This guy is like a criminal, shoots guns. So he used to be maybe in the guard or maybe not, depending on your character backstory, but like that is a very bland character idea, and there is cooler 40k stuff they could have included, right? The classes could have been like Ogryn, Admech, Kroot, like all these Eldar, like those could have been, instead of a Psyker, you could have had an Eldar. Like they could have done really, really crazy out of left field stuff and gone way off the deep end with it. But I think the classes we have, honestly, are pretty cool and pretty inspired, especially the Psyker, right? The Psyker, out of those ones I read earlier, does really stand out because they have a unique resource. The second criticism that I've been seeing a lot, I think I have a perfect analogy to tie this together and explain this for players. So people say Ganger is basically Veteran, or they'll say Ganger is basically Zealot, just like based on the conceptualization. I think most players think that it's going to be kind of similar to one of those. How could you differentiate it? Well, first and foremost, like differentiating this class from the other classes is the core responsibility of Fat Shark, of creating another class. If they kept cooking on this class and coming up with stuff and it never differentiated itself, and they're like, oh, this is just like too samey with other stuff, they wouldn't print it, right? They're not that hungry for money. I mean, we can see by their production, by their productivity, like how much output they have in a year. They're not that hungry for revenue, right? So they're going to make a quality piece of content that in their eyes is differentiated from other classes. And the perils of having it not be differentiated, of having it be too similar to existing stuff, are pretty steep, honestly. Because if you make, say you make like a Veteran, but instead of laser weapons, they shoot bullet weapons, and instead of grenades, they have booby traps, right? If you do that, players will quickly figure out just by playing which one of them is better, and they'll just play that one. Like a vast majority of players will do that, and that is the sort of tightrope they have to walk. Is if as more and more classes get added to this game, and the blank space that hasn't been explored yet gets narrower and narrower, well, then you have to sort of get really creative to make these classes distinct. Because if you don't, players are going to drop one class and play that class in favor of it, and or it's just going to be obsolete, dead on arrival. So you really need to paint your characters in such a way that you make them interesting and distinct from moment one. Even like inexperienced players should be able to tell this character is distinct and different and get a different gameplay experience out of it. Otherwise, there's literally no purpose in making the class. And this is where I want to make an analogy or make a comparison that'll tie both these first 2 points in together. You know, that's a boring concept, there's cooler stuff, it's basically X, how could you differentiate it? Look at a game like World of Warcraft, right? World of Warcraft has, I think, 13 or 14, maybe even 15 playable classes now, right? Look at Death Knight, look at Paladin, look at Warrior. How different are these classes on paper, just conceptually? We have the Paladin, who is a melee fighter, generally, with holy magic, and we have the Death Knight, who is a melee fighter with undead, like magic, like shadow magic or whatever, right? So that differentiation is just what type of magic they use. All of the rest of it comes down to what abilities they have, what additional flair they can bring. Is there certain like special like looks and aesthetics to the classes that really just make them distinct? And then you've got the Warrior, who's like perhaps the hardest to characterize of all. He's literally just like the Paladin or the Death Knight with no magic. So how do you make that class distinct? How do you make that class fun to play? Why would anyone play one over the other? Like, I played Warrior for years, then I played Death Knight for an expansion. Why was I so interested in playing Warrior when he's such a bland concept? Well, I thought Warrior and the way it played in game was really, really fun, even though Warrior for a lot of patches is like bottom of the barrel in terms of actually doing damage. And I'm usually a person who tries to optimize pretty well in my games. So yeah, you can make a class that otherwise seems very bland on the surface, very distinct, by giving them different resources. So like Warriors build rage by attacking and taking damage. You have Death Knights that have runes in addition to the runic power that you have to kind of balance and spend one and not the other. And then you've got Paladins who have their holy charges that you have to build up and then cash them in on abilities. So there's like fun ways to make these classes differentiated and make them feel different and fleshed out enough that you'll get people playing them no matter what, because that's their favorite. So whatever they're going to print here, I've said this on the stream before, it literally wouldn't matter if the class they were releasing was a cardboard box. If it had cool abilities and differentiated itself from the other classes by being powerful in its own unique way, people are going to be hyped about it. People are going to play it. And this is what takes me to the last thread that we have, the last thing I had to dismantle. And I think this, honestly, is at the root of all this discussion. This one criticism, it underlies so much of this. I think people have this criticism in their hearts, but they hide it. And they put it behind, you know, talking about why this ganger concept or whatever other X concept is boring and wouldn't work, etc. It's not as good as yada yada. It's just the same as the other thing. It's because deep down, I feel like 90% of these criticisms are just, why didn't they do AdMech, dude? Give me Skitarii, bro. Like, what the hell, Fat Shark? We want Skitarii. Everyone's been saying AdMech. Where is it? Come on. Like, that seems like, I'm not even joking, 50% plus of these comments mention AdMech or Skitarii somewhere in there. People are obsessed with this idea. And what I'll say to that is, hey guys, me too, bros. Like, I literally made a video about it like months ago saying, I want this to be the next character class. This would be awesome. And you know what? Fat Shark has heard us, guys. They are working. They are busy. There's going to be more character classes. They have already said that there are more character classes coming. They've got a bunch on the short list. And, you know, I can't reveal my sources, but I think that they've heard our pleas and that they're very well aware of some of the stuff that players have been demanding for a long time. Extra enemy races, new factions, and certain character classes that people really want, or perhaps even some that we haven't talked about yet, that haven't been brought up by the community. They have to develop the narrative over time in a certain way. So when you think about like the escalation of battle, right now things are pretty low stakes, but we are going to start exploring stuff on Tertium. If we're going for the Ganger route, well, Ganger might be a boring concept to a lot of people, but there is a whole literal lore history built around Necromunda as a concept. Why is Necromunda still a concept that is still receiving releases from Games Workshop if gangs and gang interplay isn't interesting to players? It can be as interesting as you make it. So if they start in with that, then we'll be focusing on stuff on planet side. Maybe they uncover some secret, or maybe the Cult of Admonition summons in demons and we get like Nurgle demons or something, and then from there the conflict escalates and we need to bring in bigger guns. Like that could be when the Skitarii or the Admech step in, because this is a Forge world with a unique resource in Mobian Steel. They need to defend it, so then we get a new character class in that form, and then who knows where it goes from there, right? So like this can still all happen. It just, in my opinion, is not going to be happening right now. Personally, I'm going to wait and see what the class is, and then I'm going to judge it for its merits. If it is cool and fun to play, I'm really hoping it is. I think they can do a good job, because every class release they put out, I've been very excited and jazzed to play. So this one hopefully won't be any different, and we'll find out in like just, 2 days time what it indeed is. So I'll see you then, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what you want that's not a Skitarii or a Ganger, and I'll see you next time.